having been involved in this content, this genre, for at least 10 years, I've been through my fair share of news headlines that are top stories in both the mainstream media and alternative media that are basically suggesting that the entire economy is about to collapse before our very eyes. And having been involved in this for a period of time, and I'm not saying that something's not coming, but we, over a period of time, begin to see, in some cases, some of the same individuals warning of a specific scenario, and of course, it's present with the Hegelian dialectic to buy into something or to buy something literally, and it's good to be prepared. I've said this many times. Then there's the business aspect of it that some people truly rely on, to where unless there's a problem, unless there's a fear of a particular problem, they're not making sales. I do think that this would be a good time, though, to get in on silver for those that can't afford to. I'm happy that I'm able to just make it and make my land payments. Very special thank you to Jared, those of you that are supporting over at Patreon, also at outsidethebox.vhx.tv, those that also send donations via PayPal. I enjoy doing what I'm doing off the grid because of what I'm investing in. It's the focus and time that I'm investing in my own platform here, and nearly everything going to pay off the land that I'm paying a little bit more than it's actually worth. But why? Why would I do that? Why would I go through that and this way of life? It's the long-term repercussions of the economic fallout. Whether it's today or whether it's 5 years from now, I'm letting you know that I think it's a serious issue. And it's really a cascade of events. If people were dealing with a full-on economic collapse to where the price of bread was through the roof during a time in which the nation's at war, during a time in which there's natural disasters, during a time in which there's shortages, perhaps of water in certain areas, maybe a deep-seated drought, those are very concerning issues, and I think that we're coming up on this point in time. So when it comes to being prepared, when it comes to investing in things, there are things to think about, but you have to think for yourself. There are people that will take advantage of you. There are people that will take advantage of me. You know, I have so many stories to tell that are almost better suited for a book that goes over all these different little points in my life. But I can remember talking to the eFoods Direct guy on the phone. I think his name was Steve Shank or something to that effect. And he was literally either filling me out where I was at, if I was like him. I've seen other people do this, you know, to have what it takes to sell, and develop a partnership or get a sponsorship. And see, a lot of people that got sponsorships from individuals, well, there's more behind the scenes with regards to their relationships. Of course, it's important for a host to have a huge audience, to which I've never had, but they want to hear someone say the things that are basically required to sell marked up food supply, for example. And so when Steve is talking to me on the phone, I had my cell phone at the time, don't use the cell anymore. He was saying that the full-on collapse was coming by 2008, and there won't even be time to grow anything. And it was like a cold demeanor, like, well, I'm not going to talk to you about maybe, you know, a partnership or an ad on your website because you're not in line with my school of thought. And that was educating early on, and it would be about 2 or 3 years later that I helped a few individuals open up a survival store, helped them find the spot. They actually sat me down at the table one day and said, Alex, we just want to make sure you're on board with what this actually is. You see, you're telling us that these people here in Portland are low income and aren't going to pay this much money for what we're giving for this. How do you know that? Like, whoa, you think I'm just going to like use my audience and direct them all to this store and let you burn them for this marked up? So it was a very short period in time in which I let them use me. So there are people that you will see that involve themselves in the news cycle, that are involved in distributing goods, that are playing up certain threats because of what they have to sell. Having said that, are we heading towards a potential of certain things? We have been for a long time, and that's why I opted for a quiet way of life on 1 acre in the hills where it is damn boring. The only action going off is a few gunshots going off in 360. And you get used to it after a while. And the sound of traffic and the sound of awkward cars idling outside for perhaps too long. A way of life, but a way of life that's different than being another sardine in what I've coined a dense population center. So the question is, are you prepared? I don't think that you need me to get on board the agenda of what everybody else is doing pretty much and telling you day in and day out that the dollar is about to be collapsed and everybody's collapsing the dollar. And the thing is, you talked about the cry wolf bombardment. There seems to be a strong element of that with the dollar's collapsing all the time crowd, because at the moment we still have a strong dollar. Now, having a strong dollar doesn't mean that we have a strong economy. You know, my feeling is we've been sold out by the presidents and the people that are really controlling our economy behind the scenes to countries like China, but we're not really feeling the effect of it. And a lot of people are poo-pooing it or downplaying the full-on level of tyrannical behavior that's coming, but the full-on deep-seated corruption involving their guy or their girl. For Democrats, Hillary. For Republicans, it's Trump. And back in the day, it would be Obama, but really wasn't much support for McCain. Even then, I think they threw it in the direction of Obama for the populist vote. McCain wasn't really someone that was picked to give Obama a run for his money. The whole system's been rigged. We are slaves, essentially. And it's when the slave wakes up to the idea that they're enslaved and there's a way out. There is a way out of the cave, but you cannot attack the person that's trying to point the way out of the cave. You cannot just assume, because it seems instinctual, you cannot just continue to assume that someone intends to do you wrong or mislead you because they're not getting behind the bottom line. You know what I think? I think that we don't have enough people that think independently in this country, that are on radio, that are on TV. I like the compliment that came in on some video saying that I should be on Fox News, but that would be a person that doesn't know my content very well. They may be drawn in to really like my mind, my intellectual analysis, until, of course, I say something that disagrees with perhaps their left-right paradigm. Because anyone recommending Fox News is in the left-right paradigm. I appreciate the compliment, but let's be real. But I appreciate the compliment. As I, complimented James Pilato and James Corbett, and there's others worth complimenting that I think are worth their salt being on mainstream TV. Not to compliment the mainstream or say the mainstream is truthful, but if we had something that was more fair and balanced in the true sense, to where we could see the rise of speakers, for example, on the telly, on the cable telly, and it not be so controlled, that would be nice. But by the way, if you do have a cable access television center in your community, you should support that. And I don't mean financially. It's more of let other people know about it. Put content on cable access TV. Contact me about working with me to create special programs for airing in your community. That's if you wanted to do that. So the reason I'm going through the things that I'm going through now is because of the long-term economic collapse. But as far as mental health is concerned, if you surround yourself or anyone, myself, with negative news upon negative news, that can become your reality. Heaven forbid you end up a little depressed, only looking at depression, collapse, World War III news. Heaven forbid. And it's almost as if some of the popular YouTubers, like one that continues to go viral while claiming that he was a victim of Google, being blacklisted by Google, claiming he's a victim, claiming he's being held back, right? When he's literally serving the man in his own way, sitting there with over 523,000 subscribers. And there's only so many people that were a little bit under the Mr. AJ category, although in recent years there's been the rise in this free market of people watching what they want to watch. There's been the rise of the YouTube star. But I've said time and time again, despite the fact that I support someone's ability to become successful, some of these individuals have risen in a fairly artificial way, and some other people see what they're doing and they go, oh, it's all about the keywords. It's almost, and it is like that in a way. They're not wrong. They're not wrong. It's that money can corrupt when that's the only reason that they're doing what they're doing. You know, what I'm doing is not a business. Someone in the comment section misunderstood what I was saying. but I was explaining that this is a business with regards to YouTube. And within the frameworks and limitations of that, if we don't want to lose our channel, we need to be smart enough to see the writing on the wall. Now, 5 years ago, I talked about a Google doomsday, Google YouTube doomsday. And I talked about Google Plus and how it just felt that they could manufacture an event or allow something to happen, or it could just be a normal cyber attack, and we could see the end of certain platforms. And we have seen confirmation that there's something afoul with the announcement that Google Plus is going to delete itself. After a hack that Google didn't warn the users about, what kind of data did they get? Maybe sounds that were recorded in the background, maybe things to the webcam, maybe private messages, maybe your search history. Think about all that being open sourced one day. Sound kind of freaky? Oh, it gets more involved. Then we saw the glitches with PayPal and the PayPal website about a year ago not working, and that was another sign. We've seen the shadow banning. So we've seen sign after sign after sign, but out of the economic collapse coming any moment now, and it's some of the same characters that are viral on YouTube. What are they doing to help build economic prosperity in America other than co-sign the president? And if they're so concerned about the economy, why continue to give him a pass? But why does this even have to be about him? What about the period in which people talked about local currencies? And there were articles where there was actual pictures of local currencies, what the actual currency, what the actual paper looked like, statewide, regional wide, and there was momentum growing around that idea. I'm not saying that we should be perfect, and I'm not saying that we're total F-ups. I'm saying that we got to be balanced with this stuff. First of all, you don't want to go crazy like certain individuals. I know one person that used to live in Portland that someone said or left in the comment section one day that he had offed himself. And yet a lot of my ideas were mocked by this individual while I lived in Portland. What are the things that I've talked about? I've talked about the mental health issues. Well, even the Archon podcast is a conversation about mental health. While someone might see me as crazy for even like giving it that level of definition, if someone removes the word Archon and the direct paranormal references, I'm talking about cognitive failure that comes through the bombardment of some of the negative toxic energies of this world. And so that those negative thought forms and images, negative affirmations, can literally form an entity of sorts. This is speculative, but there is something about what we focus on manifests. And I've been on the fence with regards to certain things, but now that I can more clearly see how much they want to get us to focus on negative things, depressing things, things that are not awesome, things that are horrible, things that are warlike. See, now they got us all in all these wars. Now there's little opposition to these wars. Now people are numb to it and really don't want to be reminded of what's going on. I don't think some of you may appreciate, but I don't think most people, especially in regular society, want me reminding them about these never-ending immoral wars. Heaven forbid I call them immoral and insult their family that's dedicated their lives to imperialism. Oh, triggered. And let's just be real. Let's just be real. All the people that have been triggered on both sides, but including those sides in which people prefer to point their finger and call the others snowflakes. So anyway, how has all this internal fighting and the fighting in the streets, the burning of flags, and the defending of the flags done anything for our economy and to boost local business? How has this rise in technology, this free flow, there may be censorship on YouTube, but there's still a lot of internet freedom. What have we done to help each other? And I can't be the one to do all this, not when I'm living off of, a certain amount per month. Thank you to those of you, though, especially that have been helping me during this period as I go into winter. I picked up some propane, so I'm good for a good month for heating costs. I'm not yet at the level to where I can invest in a good fire stove that'll fit safely in something this small. So something this small does heat quite nicely using propane. How prepared are we for an economic collapse? How talented are you at making $100 in cash last with regards to what food do you buy? Do you buy online? Are there certain places? Have you identified the cheapest place for quinoa? You can find it on eBay, by the way, $15 for like 3 pounds. Freebie there. No, more like 5 pounds for $15. That's cheaper than most markets. Canned beef. Canned beef. I'd like to be able to afford some of the stuff that's sitting there on eBay. Some of the stuff that's made by the Amish. You got that canned bacon there. But I don't know about $14 for a can. My Lord. One of the things that I do want to do, though, is to get oatmeal and pancake mix and find various food companies. See, there's certain things that if it's expired, like an expired power bar, just like that video I did that has a fair amount of views, cheap grocery store in Kansas City, where the brother was showing us the candy bars and the jerky and other things that because they were expired, they were being sold for like a quarter. Certain things like that are really good for 72-hour grab-and-go kits. I want to rebuild one for next year. I'd like to build or get another microphone, by the way, at some point. But right now, it's been a matter of personal economic survival. Just took care of my registration that was owed and looking at getting some insurance soon. Just took care of a flat tire, which is the reality of living off the grid and driving over nails, and taking care of the remaining balance for a ticket owed to the local town after a ticket received over the summer. So it feels good to be able to survive. And we have to understand that I'm trying to keep this simple. This is not like videos I've done in the past. All we're trying to do is just stay alive. And a lot of this stimulus about collapse and things going out in certain scenarios, a lot of us have already faced the collapse. Some of us have already been homeless at least once. Some of us have actually been through certain things economically that other people haven't. And once you go through those things or live off grid or survive living in your car, or invest in something like silver coins and put out the affirmation that one day that's going to be at least a down payment for your land, and you actually see that affirmation actually manifest, then that helps take you away from the brutal fear of never having faced hunger, never having faced homelessness, never having faced poverty. Thanks to those of you that have been supporting me over the years, and of course other means and jobs that I've taken here and there, and the AdSense, I've never actually starved. I've never actually frozen the point where I've been, where I had to go to a homeless shelter. I was always very self-reliant in that 1 year in which I was living mobily and invested money made on Craigslist, working with a friend at the time to build a homemade teardrop camper on wheels while continuing to speak on cable access TV. And now we're in the most popular so-called progressive cities in the country, known as Portland, Oregon. Not so progressive to me when I felt like my class or caste status frightened people away, along with my activism. It was really a combination of those two. More so than any other issues and other things and challenges that I face, but it would really, in that case, come down to politics or unique insight and lack of tribe coming from, again, my income status and not being in the left-right paradigm. And when you go through that and you survive that, it's something that can empower you. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you have to go through something like that to be empowered. But those of you that have thought about being free from the grid, you can go the way that I went and just wait till you have your own economic collapse and you're not making anything anymore and you're burnt out from living in the city. And I was living in Dallas, Texas with a good paying job for a year. Tell the person decided his multi-level marketing plan, which sounded more like a scam, and I didn't like it. That program came to an end. And then I found myself, instead of backtracking to Portland, Oregon, going and living in Costilla County. And a friend that I had at the time that almost was, sent by the Creator, where only during that time he felt a connection. And another person that I considered a friend at the time was like connections, people there at the right moment. And even though Facebook has its negatives, a lot of synchronicities happening through Facebook. And so basically people that I thank the Creator for made their way into my life. And so I went through, I guess, the next level of my experience of that faith. Just, as I prayed by the Rio Grande River in Costilla County, Great Spirit. Not so much monotheistic God, but just literally Great Spirit beyond what a lot of people understand. That spirit that's connected to that Ute Mountain, that spirit just get me through this period. A period where in some cases, even with propane fuel, my Mr. Buddy stove over there, it was in a yurt with no insulation. I survived some really messed up stuff. And so, a lot of this fear, I see people that are really well off, obsess upon the economics, and completely overlook morality within today's society. They enjoy calling society morally bankrupt while pointing their friggin' finger. None of us are perfect. And a lot of the things that I've come to understand about human psychology, I've come to understand from studying myself, some people that have interacted with me, but see, a lot of the things that I talk about is based on personal experiences and an inner knowing. So even if I read a book where I learn something, and that is one decent book by Fortune Dean, Psychic Self-Defense, written in 1930. There's a lot of good things in that book. There's a lot of things that make someone go, this reminds me of someone. This reminds me of a certain experience. Oh, this is why this was happening. And then I can also look at that book and go, yeah, but here's also something that could be added in. Here's advice for a new YouTuber that's not familiar with all these different things they might want to do more of, things they may want to do less of, things they may advise, perhaps, that they can use about understanding human psychology, even the psychology of some audience members. And it's a point to understand what we're dealing with, and not everyone is at the same level. People are at different levels of being receptive to spiritual information or outside-the-box ideas. Ultimately, society doesn't support it. And a lot of these ideas, so that's going to come through periodically in elements of the audience. But ultimately, I care about you, and I care about my own evolution. And I know that when we talk about the illusions of separation, it's beyond ethnicity. And I know that most of you understand that. You understand the concept. You're familiar with people talking about the illusions of separation throughout history. And a lot of people are stuck in the illusions of separation with regards to class, with regards to whether or not someone has a home, whether or not someone has a registered home where they've actually been permitted by the county to be basically living, alive, breathing somewhere, using alternative means of surviving. And see, being that, I'm somewhat of an outlaw in the case that I live in a way that's not allowed in most places in the United States. There's only a few places left in the United States or in Colorado that basically allow someone to be left alone on their property. Some counties, like, even if they have rule books, they have like the real code to where, no, we don't mess with our people. We like having a workforce. That's kind of how it is here. We're not trying to like make our people homeless. Thank you very much. But see, the state itself and the federal government, they're breathing down the necks of the counties, trying to force them to regulate certain things. There's a scary future coming. Nothing's guaranteed. Not even my, nothing. We can know someone that's older, right? How do you know, though, that they're going to leave this earth before us? It's not guaranteed that we're going to make it till the average age of human life. What does that mean? Every moment matters. Every moment matters. If we're stuck in fear and anxiety all the time, depressed about depressions, right? Are we really being all that we can be? Are we really sharing and opening up our heart? And by the way, I believe there's a Chinese proverb that someone shared with me recently, although Jared always sends good stuff. But this is from someone else that talked about maintaining an open heart, but a strong back, like an ox. So even if we open up our heart and we're hurt by the judgment of this world, we maintain a strong back, a strong base, and we keep moving forward. Something like staying in balance, kind of like the yin and the yang. And a lot of my thinking is constantly coming back to that. I'm noticing a lot of it is Eastern in nature. And even looking at how I talk about and interpret and feel out the solar minimum and solar maximum, it is a yin and a yang with a bit of balance, that the two literally play off each other. Some people don't know the balance between the solar minimum and solar maximum. So they may be lost in catastrophobia without a real interest in the spiritual behaviors of the cosmos, whether we're dealing with a more active sun or a less active sun with these cosmic rays. Well, is there potentially something spiritual about the cosmic rays? Should we always be fearing those? And could there be periods in which there's a breakthrough in elements of human consciousness while some people are literally on their way to the loony bin in a padded vehicle? And so whether or not you end up in a mental health crisis is ultimately up to you, but I would not allow yourself to go autopilot with what YouTube is suggesting. I would not allow yourself to go autopilot with Facebook if you're still on Facebook, and it's okay if you are. Use restraint and take some of the advice that I have provided for you. I want to appreciate the feedback that some of you have given me, that you're getting something out of this. I want to thank, is it Renee, that joined on Patreon recently after finding my article on mass media through mind control, and I wrote that 12 years ago. Or maybe it was a video she saw. And so it's inspiring to me to see that it's affecting some of you in a positive way. You know, there's ways in which the machine, love it, hate it, a little bit of both, may help us and people find our content through the suggested nature of the algorithm. And I appreciate that. But I really appreciate it when the support comes directly from people like you. Whether it's financial, whether it's spiritual, whether it's moral. What really stands out is when people maintain their presence over the years, when they don't consider this to be like McDonald's, when they appreciate the unique thought that goes into these videos and not just doing the rip and read to be like everybody else. I appreciate you for allowing me to be me. Because there was a time in which the reality and news of others was more of a mainstay on this channel and in some of my earlier outside the box episodes. But I always appreciated that part of myself that went outside the box of the norm, that shared my own views, even if it was wacky, that shared my own projections, that shared my own timelines and understandings without getting involved in the chorus. And at one point seemed like the InfoWars-driven chorus, and in some cases the RT-driven and other-driven. And staying away from that, and as popular as it may have been, and as much as it may have interrupted actual friendships between myself and others, I'm glad that I didn't change. I'm glad that the change within me that is taking place is more of a positive sense, because we're always changing. But as far as changing what my stated intentions are, my core content topics, my warnings, my timelines, some of the basic spiritual ideas from 10 years ago to now, it's a lot of the same content. It's a lot of the same ideas. And while some people might be bored with coming back to center with what some of these things are really all about and talking about certain rules of thumb, even if it's cliche, I'd rather be myself and authentic than a counterfeit, copycat, carbon copy of someone else. And see, if we're really to talk about wealth creation, what's important, what's valuable, what matters in life, then we're going to be going in a different conversation than what you're hearing from most people that are warning of the sky falling. And even with that paradigm of the sky falling within the next few years, and I'm not convinced that it will or that it won't, we're more or less a part of a process. And there is a social, moral, ethical collapse. There is a collapse of honesty. There is a collapse of a sense of community. And so there are certain collapses that some of these talking heads probably should talk more about than projecting their own fears of losing the materialism that they've already acquired. Now, if I am finding myself in a better financial situation, if YouTube decides, for example, to start treating me a little bit better in the next few months, I would like to donate or to invest, rather, in silver rounds. I'm not investing in silver rounds. But a little story about investing in silver rounds, because sometimes when you invest in silver, it's not like cash to where, you spend it. It's almost easier to save money when investing in silver rounds. So some of the rules of thumb of taking just a little bit of what you can afford, or a little bit of your monthly income, if you have an income, for example, so like 5%, 10%, there's different rules of thumb. I think that this is a good time to invest in a fair amount of silver. Maybe it could go down to 13, but when it's sitting right now at 14.32, and even though you have a lot of people talking about the dollar collapse, the dollar is technically strong at the moment in some ways. When it does go south, it could go south all at once. And we did see in 2011, thank God I didn't buy any silver during that Christmas, because that's when it started to fall. It was $50 an ounce in 2011. And so, thinking outside the dollar, could include also thinking outside of cryptocurrency. The jury's still out on long-term where that's going to go, but quite a few people are suspicious that it's really part of the conditioning for a one world order digital currency. And there are all these other types of creepy apps that seem to be popping up in the cryptocurrency arena. Companies, is there going to be some sort of thing that will connect our DNA with the blockchain? It almost sounds like some people are suggesting this. And this sounds like something that is akin to the mark of the beast, while they're saying that it's safe. So, if you want to talk from the Christian perspective of there will be deceivers and there'll be a bunch more deceivers behind them, I think right now we have a lot of examples of that. So, think with your higher consciousness, look intuitively at things, look practically at things, look at the news cycle, and just because we know that the mainstream media is always lying, right? Just because the mainstream media isn't screaming that the sky is falling and that the dollar is collapsing now, this second, doesn't mean that we should assume that the information that you're getting from the alternative, or I can just mention any number of YouTube channels, don't assume that their narrative is the correct one. If we're going to be concerned about collapse and preparing for it, what type of collapse are we talking about? And how are people actually taking their concerns into actual practical action instead of just staying on social media and going from one report to another? Because that is not a way to prepare for an economic collapse. Sharing articles, fixating on the news, letting it affect your health, and worse yet, telling yourself that things are so bad in your mind that there's no point in diversifying your portfolio or preparing for tomorrow. I've literally met people that are broken that don't even believe in storing water. What's the point anyways? We're all going to die. I've basically heard people. I've met people, even recently. And it's that's not something that you can argue against. There are some people that we just have to allow them to be where they are. Until the next video, I'm Alex Ansary, reminding you the path to the ultimate truth and place of power still lies within.